The R code that I show in this video is available on Elms, and you may want to take a minute to download it and open it if you'd like to follow along on your own. This video will cover diagnosing errors in RMarkdown. By the end of this video, you should have strategies for identifying and correcting syntax errors in .rmd files when using RStudio. Just like RMarkdown has a very specific syntax. Things like parentheses, brackets, braces, and backticks all need to match up precisely. R code that's in code chunks or inline code can't result in errors or exceptions. If there are problems like these, knitting your document will fail. This is going to happen a lot. Typos are pretty common. So how can you tell what went wrong? If RMarkdown encounters an error processing your RMD file, RStudio is going to display an error message in the console window. It's going to tell you the line of the RMD file where it thinks it encountered the error. What this is the line where knitter stopped processing. Conveniently, if you double click on the error, it's going to take you to that line of your file in the editor window. You should just be aware that the error might have occurred earlier in your file. Before you even try knitting your document though, you might notice that there's red X's by the line numbers in the editor window. This is another way to identify errors. This isn't foolproof, but it's going to identify some common typos. When you see one of these red X's, you can hover your cursor over it to see what RStudio thinks is wrong. You've also noticed by now that RStudio uses context-sensitive highlighting. It's going to use different colors to convey information about what you've typed in the editor window. Importantly, you should note that the background color changes for things that are surrounded by backticks. So when you create code chunks, the background color is going to be different than the standard background color. You can use this kind of highlighting as a guide to where you might have made a mistake. Recognizing your errors using context-sensitive highlighting is something that will take time and come with experience, but in the end is probably one of the better ways to diagnose mistakes. So what I have here is a sample RMarkdown file. Now if you try and knit this file, you'll notice that you'll run into some errors. I intentionally gave you a file that has errors in it so we can explore fixing them. Context-sensitive highlighting can be one good way to detect errors. You'll notice that the code chunks in this file have a slightly different background color than everything else. They're kind of that light gray as opposed to the black background. Of course, these colors are going to depend on the color settings that you have configured in RStudio. You can use these to help you diagnose if possibly you didn't put the right number of backticks in or you have some other kind of error in your document. So let's look through to see if we can pick out anything using this context-sensitive highlighting. So what you can see here is the code chunk that I have at the top on lines 15 through 19 starts and ends with the correct number of backticks. The context-sensitive highlighting also ends at line 20, so the code chunk looks self-contained. Now look at the next code chunk. You'll notice on line 25, I only have 2 backticks, not 3. So the gray highlighting continues farther down than I would expect it to. And also notice that text that I typed in isn't the same color as text everywhere else, and R is underlining words that it doesn't like me using. All of these things should be red flags that there are syntax errors in the file. Looking at those red X's, you can get RStudio to tell you what it thinks is causing the error with a red X by taking your mouse and hovering over the red X. What it's telling me here is that there's unexpected tokens. It's trying to interpret my sentence as R code, and it's seeing words that it doesn't expect to normally see inside of R code. So how can I repair these errors? Well, it turns out it's all a result of this missing backtick. So clicking in front of it, I can type an additional backtick. You'll notice that the context-sensitive highlighting now matches what I would expect, and the error messages on my text go away. Now I've repaired my errors, so let's see what happens when I try and knit the document. And you'll notice that in the console, there is still an error in this file. There's a very difficult to comprehend error message down at the bottom, including a line number. I can actually put the cursor over this error message and double click on it to have RStudio take me to where it thinks the error might be. Well, you'll notice that RStudio has taken me to line 30, but in reality, the error in this file is on line 33. As you can see, I have 9 times 5 times, and then the assignment operator with no number in between. You can't end an expression with an asterisk with the multiplication operator. If I put one more number in here, the error message goes away. That should be the last error in this file, and now if I try and knit it, I should get a functional Word document. And as you can see, the output document was created without any errors. Lastly, sometimes it's not going to be clear exactly what caused an error in your RMD file. If it's a problem with your R code, you can run the chunks of your R code one at a time by pressing the green play buttons in the corner. There's also a downward pointing green arrow that runs every code chunk prior to the code chunk that you're looking at. So you'll notice in the upper right hand corner of every code chunk are several icons. the green arrow will run the code in your code chunk and print it out in the window. I'm going to do that right now. Now what you'll notice is it tried to run this code, var1 times var2 times var3, and it says object var1 can't be found. That's because var1 is defined in a code chunk up towards the top of the file. I haven't run all those code chunks yet, so var1 isn't defined. The second icon that you have available here, this arrow pointing down to a line, runs every code chunk above this one. This is a handy way to take care of any setup code that you might need to run before running this code chunk. So I'm going to do that first. You'll notice in the output window, a bunch of code has run, every code chunk prior to this one. Now I can finally run this code chunk by pressing the green play button. I do that, and you'll notice that it prints a result out in the output window. But also if I scroll down in the editor window, it shows me the result of this chunk of code in the editor window as well. If you're having trouble diagnosing particular problems with your code, this is a great way to run individual segments of it to see where things might have gone wrong. So again, using cues from context-sensitive highlighting, the error messages that are put in the margin by the line numbers, and also double-clicking on errors when you encounter them trying to knit a document are all methods that you can use to diagnose errors in your Markdown documents.